Hello. No. No. Come in, guys, come in. Session is starting. Hello. Okay, no, I don't have a microphone. Can you hear me? Oh, yes. Okay, the user modeling session, session number 1 of the conference on recommender system, the year is 2022. Please come in and take your seat. We have no time to waste. All right, so I'm your session chair. My name is Peter Brusilovsky. Can you hear me? Raise your hands if you hear me. All right, good. So you like to see how I'm looking? This is the way I'm looking, but I'll be in my mask. All right, so exciting session today. User modeling is a very important field. That's where recommender system started. That's why the first session is user modeling. We get exciting lineup of the papers. The first one is actually win the best paper award, and we'll be getting this best paper award after the presentation. So I remind you about the procedure. It's 15 minutes per paper. You only have 12 minutes to present. Martijn, you hear? 12 minutes to present. Then 3 minutes for questions. It's brutal, so please help us by making it more organized. Your question should be answered in Slido, and I'll be looking through that, sifting them, and asking questions on your behalf. Well, you learned the procedure. We've already seen it with more in the keynote. This is it. So the first paper, the student paper award winning, is exploring the longitudinal effect of nudging on user gender exploration, behavior, and listening preference. Whew. Okay, Martijn.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for reading out the title. I don't have to do that. This is joint work with Liang, my P2 student, who did most of the work here. It's really sad that she cannot be here because she had a very hard time to get a visa for the US. Because if you're a PhD student doing machine learning and, anyway. So you have to cope with me, and I will try to present her presentation as good as I can. The work I'm going to present today is part of the sort of work we do in my lab. I like to do research on recommender systems to help people move forward and to have them explore new tastes and new preferences rather than just sort of reinforcing what they already like. And this is part of that work. It's a question, how can we help people to explore a new music genre? And that's actually a really difficult task, right? To do something new and then do that in a personalized way. So our approach is that we want to do a little bit of nudging. We use decision psychology to help people achieve that task. So nudging is a concept from decision making, and it's supposed to be a way to help people in decisions by restructuring or reordering or highlighting different decision aspects, but without forcing them to make a particular choice. It's a concept developed by Taylor and Sunstein. It has been a bit overused in a way as a term, but also in recommender systems, we have been using nudges a lot. There's also a very nice review paper by Jesse and Jannach in 2021. And people have been doing things like reordering recommendation lists or giving visual nudges on blind spots to help them explore their blind spots and maybe also develop new tastes by Nava Tinserev et al. And we ourselves have been using nudges to explore new music genres in a paper that we presented at RecSys last year. And let me tell you a little bit about that music exploration tool that we developed, because it's also going to be used in the talk today. So this tool allows people to explore a new genre. So when you come in, you pick a new genre that you want to explore. For example, I'm a classical music lover, but I want to explore reggae. So I pick reggae, and then I get a list of recommendations and a slider. And the slider allows me to get recommendations that are more representative of the genre or more personalized. So basically songs, reggae songs that are fit more my musical taste. So it's going to be more classical reggae songs. And we give people a nice contour plot visualization to show how the recommendations lie in between their own sort of preference space and the explorations, the space of the genre they are exploring. And the slider can be used to basically go from more representative to more personalized recommendations. And as I Oh, let me move back here. You can see that also the visualization changed, and you see that the recommendations change in between your preference and the genre you're exploring. So last year, we used nudging to help people do this exploration task by nudging the default position of that slider. And what we found is that if the slider is more on the representative side of the slider position, then people also tend to explore further away from their current preferences. And that makes it a bit more helpful to use this tool. But the problem with that study was that it was just a single session, and people reported their perceived helpfulness. They were sort of envisioning whether the tool would really help them to explore, but they actually didn't really explore, in the sense that we didn't measure whether they actually listened to that playlist and whether they sort of used it more continuously after a few weeks to still listen to music from that genre. So that's a task that we took up for this year. And there's a lot of exploration research out there, but typically it's not looking at more sort of the long run. If people explore, does it give you a sort of stable change in preferences? And is nudging a way to actually help that? That was our question. And we took up the effort to do a longitudinal study that we run on Prolific. And I'll tell you in this talk how we did that. So the study consisted of 4 different sessions across 6 weeks. And in the first session, we actually gave people just a playlist. And the playlist was nudged as being more representative for the genre that they selected to explore, or more personalized. So then they had to listen to the playlist as much as they like in the week after the session. And then they would enter session 2, where they would actually report on their experience with the previous playlist, how often they listened to it, whether they found stuff that they had not listened to before, stuff like that. A bunch of questions about their experience. And then they got the slider to explore the genre more with the slider and sort of create a new playlist for the next week. We did that another time, session 3, and another time in session 4. In session 4, we also measured their overall experience with the playlist and the system. And we also extracted their top tracks, both in session 4 as well as in session 1. And we looked at the actual preference change in their Spotify profile, going from the first session to the 4th session. So that's how we tackled this study, and we had these research questions. So first, for that first session, if we nudge people with a more representative or more personalized list, does that influence their initial exploration experience with the tool? Do they listen more to that music or less? Then for the subsequent sessions, how does interaction with our tool evolve over time? Do people use it, or do they stop using it? Do they move more to personalized songs and forget to actually really explore the genre or not? And also that nudging that we did, does it persist or does it fade? Do people sort of, the nudge sort of works out? And then the last research question, what's their overall experience with the tool, and what's their actual preference change after the 6 weeks that they use the tool? So these were the 2 nudges that we employed. The first is a default initial playlist, personalized or more representative. And there's no interaction here in this first session, so they just get a playlist and then they listen to that for a week. And then in the consequent sessions, there's then another nudge, which is a visual anchor. So in that interface with the trade-off slider and the visualization that we give them, we highlight their previous exploration, and they sort of know where they're coming from, which means that they can track their exploration history, and we hope that in this way they stay a bit closer to where they were, and that if we nudge them up front with a more representative playlist, that they might stick with that playlist a bit longer and tend to explore it more. So we use a visual nudge and a sort of default nudge. We had 338 participants on Prolific that had an active Spotify account, and we were really happy that after 6 weeks and 4 sessions, still about 250 people remained. So in some way, the tool actually was some sort of value because they were engaged enough to keep using the system. Of course, we paid them for that as well, but not that much. So, okay, so what happened in the results? So this is, of course, a study that generates a lot of results, and we didn't even have time to analyze all the data very deeply, given that we run the study in March, and the deadline was sort of early May or end of April. I'm not sure anymore. But let me give you the highlights here. So after the first session, we find that if people selected a genre to explore that was further away from their preferences, they were also more likely to listen to their playlist and discover new songs. So it really helps, and especially if we nudge them a bit with a representative list. They also perceived their playlist to be more helpful and satisfied. So that was good news. Then going from that first session to the second session, where they put the slider in the second session, the first time, we see a little bit of effect of our nudge. So if the original playlist was more representative, the slider was also in a more representative position in the second session. But over time, going from session 2 to 4, we see that actually the effect of the nudge in terms of the slider position fades away. There's not a very strong persistent effect of the default list that we gave up front, and there's also hardly any effect of the visual anchor that we provided. In general, people explore with the slider somewhat above the middle, which means that there's a little bit more personalized and representative, but they didn't move all the way to the personalized. So they did value the mix of more sort of personalized songs from the genre that were still representative enough from the genre to explore it. They were quite engaged, although it faded a little bit over the weeks. They still listened to the playlist a lot also after the third session. There's more engagement metrics in the paper. And over the 6 weeks, they actually perceived the playlist to be more personalized and more helpful over time. So rather than getting frustrated, they actually valued the whole thing. Then in the last session, we measured their overall experience, and we found that especially their perceived helpfulness was affected by things that we manipulated during the study or that changed during the study. For example, if they selected a genre that was further away from their current preferences, they found the tool more helpful. If their slider position was a bit more on the representative side, on average, it was more helpful. And if they discovered something new along the process, thank you, Peter, it was also more helpful. So it seemed to be that some of the parameters that we changed helped, and that some of the sort of interaction with the tool tells you why they think it's helpful or not. Now the question is, did their preference also change? Now I wouldn't say it's real preference change, but we actually look at how their top tracks on Spotify changed. And we do find that they extended their preferences over the 6 weeks. This is a very short time period, so it was already interesting to see that the top tracks were influenced by the music they listened during our session. And what we find is that in general, their top tracks actually move towards the genre they have chosen. So the difference between from session 1 to session 4 towards the genre they've chosen is smaller. We find that if they got this representative default slider up front, that difference was a bit large, as you can see in the graph here, has more effect. And we found that people that were a bit more sort of Spotify savvy were less affected because they also listened to a lot of other music, so their top tracks were not that affected, apparently. So those were the main results. There are also some limitations. First, we had to rely on self-report data in terms of what they listened to rather than actual behavioral data because we couldn't get that from the Spotify API. And that preference change is only measured on the top tracks. And we don't know, of course, what affects those top tracks. For example, if they play the playlist in background music, it might have pretty serious consequences. Anyway, we ran a longitudinal study, 4 sessions, 6 weeks. It feels that the genre exploration tool was helpful. User did extend their preferences. Although the effect of nudge didn't have a very consistent sort of persistent effect, it still helped people more to explore their preferences in the end and to move a bit more towards the genre they're exploring. And I think that shows that actually nudging within an exploration tool might be helpful. That's it. Thank you for your attention. And yes, my final slide is gone. Here it is. So is there any question?
Thank you, Martijn. Plenty of questions. The first one, from Mike Extrand. Is there evidence yet as to whether or not content shifts also come with durable changes in opinion?
Yeah, I think the 6 weeks would be too short to actually measure that, right? So we don't know. But I think given that you already changed their top tracks a little bit, I think that was reassuring for us. We had not expected that it would work already in 6 weeks.
Okay, other question, Anonymous. Question number 1, Anonymous. What do you think might be the reason for positivity bias in smart replies? Is biased data, product requirements, culture, flavor?
Sorry, positively biased?
Positivity bias in smart replies.
I think that's from the first session.
Yes, with the delay, right. Whoa, that's a lot of things in the first session. Okay. Such a nice tool.
Any questions from the room otherwise? Yeah, you could walk to them.
Okay, I actually have a question. It actually doesn't look like there are questions for this session. I'm concerned about the personality issues. There are a lot of work on personality issues in the recommender system, but here's really individual differences. You have a very visual system. Does that might affect the way people react to that? There are some visual users and there are not visual users for whom all of that complex two-dimensional representation might be a challenge. Do you have any data to hypothesize where it might be a difference for the users?
That's a very good question. We didn't measure their visual working memory or whatever. When we first developed the contour plot in an earlier study, we were actually a bit afraid that it would be so complex, but it seems that people, even people like regular people, not students, are able to cope with it, also on prolific. So in that sense, it seems like a good visual representation, but we haven't tested individual difference in terms of how they could process this.
Okay, thanks. Now we have to change. Thank you very much again, and don't go away because there should be some really nice awards for you. I don't know where they are. So maybe in fact Mike should come in and present the award because I can't find them.
He's coming over.
Okay. Meanwhile, let me announce the next presenter. Next presenter will be doing a remote presentation. Yeah. Oh, award. All right. Thank you. And guys, please do ask questions because there is really nothing in the system. So the next presenter will be doing remote presentation. It will be modeling a user repeat consumption behavior for online novel recommendation. Novel means not new. Novel means what you read, right? Books. That's exciting presentation. So welcome. There are all authors, many authors that don't even want to cite them. So hopefully they will explain about their team in the talk. Okay, somebody tune it in.